Hello my lovely creatives. I am all set up to paint a page in my sketchbook. I've not used my sketchbook for ages. I've also not used any paint for ages. I'm going to use my gouache. And I really fancy just a really relaxed hour of painting and creating something for myself. I've been using lots of color pencils, which is wonderful, but I fancy a bit of a switch in materials. And I'm looking for a reference photo. I want to paint a landscape. So I'm looking through an app called Unsplash at the moment. They have a web-based version as well, which I also sometimes use. And there's lots of royalty-free stock photos on there that you can use. So if you struggle finding good reference photos, this is a really good place to get started. I also use my own photos sometimes, or there's Facebook groups where people share photos for artists to use to paint from. I would recommend to stay away from copying other people's pictures or from just using photos from Pinterest. You want to copy anyone's work or have any copyright infringements. There we go. I have found the picture that I want to use as inspiration. It's quite a wide sort of landscape picture, so I'm going to use it in my own way and make some changes to it. And a big part of that is deciding where the horizon is going to be. So I'm going to start with a sketch, maybe here. So what I'm going to draw is this countryside lane. So there's some bushes and shrubbery here. So I know this is very light, I'll skip through this part. So I've made a sketch. It's very, very light. It's a bit hard to see. So let's mix some paint now. There we go. Let's get started. So I have a little bit of a plan. I want to create a really warm autumn feel. I love walking in the forest in autumn. So and I'm also really looking forward to using my gouache in this way, because it's been such a long time. The last time I made a painting in gouache, gosh, it must be, well, maybe months ago. When you layer gouache, you can play around with how wet or how dry you want the paint to be. You can see I mix it on the palette a bit and then add it to the paper. Using my paper dry. And I would recommend using paper that is suitable for wet mediums. But it's much drier than like wet on wet watercolor paint, for example. It's an interesting medium, gouache. I absolutely love it. I love the vibrant colors and the matte finish of it. So, it's a funny place to start, isn't it? In the middle. I usually make a little bit of a plan of where I want to go with my pictures. But I'm also very much just see how it goes and how things feel sort of person. I have my cup of tea here. So we are getting a pink sky today. So I did not tape my paper. So I love going into nature and being out in forest and for walks. I think it might be my favorite thing to do, going out for hikes. And it's one of the things I love most about living in the English countryside, is that there's so many beautiful paths, so many public footpaths around where you can walk, and there's always these really interesting small paths that you can follow, instead of in Holland everything's tarmac. There's always concrete and tarmac on the floor, not everywhere of course, and it's brilliant for cycling, but I just love the I love the English countryside, where it feels much more like you're in nature. I'm adding a little bit of yellow to this. So I always instantly feel myself relaxing when I'm painting, especially if I'm painting something like this, which is just fun and in my sketchbook, and just to practice and get ready for the day. It's going to be quite a thick layer here. You can see I mixed up a little bit of the white with pink and that orange, that warm color. Could have used a larger brush for this, I guess. I don't mind if you see your brush strokes a little bit. You can create a really even finish if you want, especially if you don't mix your colors, if you just use one color out of the top. But I quite like seeing some different colors in that sky. It doesn't have to be super even for me. So you can already see that there's going to be a tree there. I'm going to use some of that light color here as well. There's going to be some trees in front of it, but I'll paint those in later. So, I quite like how it's coming together already. Not finished yet, of course, but I'm enjoying the process. So this puff is going to be really dark. Actually, I need some dark brown for it. Well, maybe I'll use that. So I'm going to mix up some black with some of this dark, warm brown. Yeah, I like that. That's much darker than the rest. And it can actually go all the way here as well. So, all the way around the edge. You can see I'm using a bit of a dapping motion with my brush. But here I use more strokes. I'm trying to keep it a bit more even. But now I'm using a bit more of a sort of dapping motion, creating a little bit more texture in there. So, and what I'm doing so far is adding the base colors to the picture. So I can add lighter leaves and other things over this later on. I can add shadows and like much more detail to this later when this layer is dry. And when you paint in gouache, you have to remember that gouache is water-based and that layers that you add over it can always be reactivated again. So it's worth keeping that in mind when you're painting. So I'm trying to create a little bit of undergrowth sort of texture here. I can make some bushes out of that in a moment. This side is quite dark actually. can show you what picture I've used later on. Make sure that you clean your brush really well, especially if you go from darker colors back to lighter colors, because you don't want to contaminate the colors. And it happens quite easily. So, letting it dry for a moment. The beautiful thing about gouache is that you can go with lighter colors over darker colors, which is a little bit different from normal, sort of more water-based watercolor paints. So you can add darker base colors, and then later on go over it with a light. So, when you paint trees, one of the tricks is to not make your strokes too even. Trees are, well, there's some trees that are really straight, but often trees are a bit wonky. They have natural shapes, thinner branches, thicker branches, a bit of windiness, a bit of roundness here and there. And that's something that is worth to remember, because it's easy to wanting to make things really straight, and that doesn't always make things look more natural. So, I don't usually use this much black so early in the picture, so that's quite a lot of fun to do. Something a little bit different. So, if I go over that pink, I might reactivate it. The pink is a it's quite a thick layer, and because this is gouache, it can be reactivated quite easily. If I go over that, it mixes up with the pink a little bit, especially if you use lots of water. You need to be a little bit mindful of that. Just adding in some of these extra branches already. This is going to be covered in autumn leaves shortly. Quite like them. There we go. So I'm slowly carrying on, starting to add some leaves, some trees on the other side, and these are going to be a little bit more brown. So I can see my sketch through here. So I knew that I had a branch, some trees there already. You can see I'm painting with a flat brush today, which means I can use the wide side of the brush, but also the thinner flat side. I don't very often paint with a flat brush. I quite often paint with a round brush, but it's fun to do and to switch it up a little bit. And I think for these tree shapes, these lines, that sort of unevenness of the line is a little bit easier to create with a flat brush. So I'm adding in some extra trees and branches here. I know this still looks a bit wintry, but it is my plan to make lots of autumn leaves here before we're finished. So, of course, I want some more trees on this side as well. As you can see, this mixes up a bit with that pink paint that is still a bit wet. So that's something to be aware of. If you don't want that, make sure everything is dry really well. I want this to be a little bit darker though. So just adding some finer trees here. So, I think I might need to let this dry a little bit for a moment. But I can use this color, maybe I'll mix it up with a little bit of red. So here to start adding in a little bit more texture in the foreground, warm the colors up a little bit. A little bit more autumn vibes. So as you can see, I'm just going over these edges. This red is very bright, so it's instantly changing the tone of the picture by just adding that in. Maybe there's a bit of red here as well. Mix it with a little bit of orange. So you can see the sketchbook is fairly small. Mixing a little bit of brown. The sketchbook is fairly small and my strokes are quite small as well. Just having a bit of fun with him. So maybe a bit of beige. So I'm using that photo to inspiration, but I'm also very much making it up. I think it's good to use a photo as a starting point, and then from there just see what your picture needs. Unless you really want to make a picture of a specific lane, or there's a good reason why you want things to like if this is your house, or like if you, a really specific spot that you have memories of. If you're making art and you just create something for the fun of it and for practice, it's absolutely fine to move away from the reference picture. And actually I would recommend it, making the art your own. And you don't have to copy everything to the dot, which is something that I really like, just adding in a little bit of extra Irene in there, here and there. So, a bit more yellow. You don't want your paint to be too thick. This is not texture paint. The nature of gouache is that it lays flat on the paper. It's not texture paint. It's not acrylic paint that you can make big blobs of. So even though we can layer up the colors and put lighter over dark and switch things up a little bit, the picture is still flat, so no texture. But all of this starts to dry real nicely. It's really flat. You can see the tree is still a bit wet. And start adding a little bit more here. A little bit of this green color here from another time. I can add that here to the bushes a bit. Mixes up a bit with the stem of the tree, and that's fine. The tree sort of disappears in those plants a little bit, so I'm happy for that to happen. It's a bit too light. So there we go. Let's start adding some leaves to these trees as well. So I'm using the side of my flat brush. So, starting with this bright red, but I know I will add some oranges and some yellows in there as well. So, and here and there I'm going, sort of making sure that I leave the branches free, and here and there I'm going over them. I want to create something that is yeah, really around these trees. And the more water you add to your paint, the more fluid it gets, and the lighter the color will dry up. So if you want just a really soft addition of paint, you can always water your paint down a little bit and it becomes more like what you're used to is traditional watercolor paint. Mixes up with the colors underneath much more. You can play around with that. How much water would you like to add? So, I'm enjoying that pink background, that sky. You don't always have to make the sky blue. It can be quite fun to make a pink or a yellowish sky. Changes the atmosphere in the picture. So I'm just using that paint on my brush until it almost disappears. My colors are getting lighter and lighter. I don't know if you've noticed that. So, a bit more pink there. Yellow, that pink was a little bit similar to the sky, I couldn't really see it. So for this big tree, which in my view is a bit larger and a bit further forward, I'm making the leaves a bit larger. It has a bit more of an close-up effect, so we can see it a bit better. It's all a bit larger. So I'm using the side of my brush for that. Maybe that tree is already a bit more barren than the other ones. So, I think it looks quite idyllic so far. I'm enjoying it. I sort of imagine finding lots of little hazelnuts on the floor here. So let's add some texture to the road as well, because there's lots of little leaves and things on the floor, and I want to make sure we can see those as well. because that base color is really dark, I need to make sure I mix in a little bit of white with these yellows. So you can see I'm just really taking my time, no rush. Because I work quite small, I can, because I'm working quite slow, every time I add a new layer, I sort of judge how dry the layer underneath is. If you're painting along with me and you want to add new layers but the layer underneath is still really dry, really wet, make sure that you give it enough time to dry. It's very important. Making sure I'm adding in some shadows into these leaves as well. So some of these leaves might be more in the shadow, so I'm making them a little bit darker. I'm really using the tip of my brush here to create some really small shapes. I think sometimes when you're painting, you have to simplify shapes a little bit. In a photo, there's so many details and things that are in focus and out of focus, and especially when you paint quite small, it is okay to leave certain things out or to simplify the shapes. And I think that you sort of have to, it's inevitable. And the larger you work, the more space you have to add details in. Especially when you are working really small, you just have to simplify things. I really enjoyed it. I feel like this path is going around there. Maybe there's a bit more shadow underneath these bushes. This dark corner. Side here could use a little bit more red, I think. So, my lovely partner just brought me a cup of tea, which is always appreciated. I love my teas. So. It's a perfect day to be painting at the moment because it's raining outside. It's quite early. It's only about 9 o'clock here. And it's still a bit dark outside. It's rainy. It's one of those days where it feels proper autumn, and I feel this picture is a really nice way to celebrate that autumn. So I want this to feel quite dense, like there's a bit of a forest behind it, which is an effect that's not easy to create because you don't want it to be too messy or full, because then it doesn't make any sense anymore. I want it to feel like this is a path, and there's some bushes on each of the sides, and maybe a field there behind it. I also think these poles from this fence, they need to be a bit darker, stand out a bit more. But slowly and steadily, I think things are coming together. I'm going to switch to a smaller brush. That's what I need right now. So I'm going to use this really fine brush. Of course, falls apart a little bit. The outside is just falling off. So wipe off the excess water, grab some black. I'm just going to use that to add in a bit more dark on these poles. So maybe some a little bit thicker. This small brush, I have a bit more control over that, so I can decide how big or how small this is going to be. I can also use it to add in a few more trees here in the background. Some finer lines. I think on this tree, because it's such a big area here, maybe I can add some texture. Let's try that with a bit of light brown. When you use a really small brush such as this, it dries out much faster than a large brush. It doesn't hold so much water. So you have to clean it and wet it a little bit more often. What do we think? That's a bit too light maybe, isn't it? Quite like it. I know I just made this up. There's no such thing as this sort of texture in the picture. Just a really dark. But there's a lot of the dark trees. The tree's not actually this big in the picture, but I'm enjoying them. I think this looks great. I think that's how you can make an illustration out of something that is just copying. was originally just copying a photo. I quite like that. I think that looks cute. I'm also going to use some of this really light yellow, so make sure I mix it up with a bit of white. I'm always using quite a lot of white when I paint with gouache. It makes my color lighter, of course, but also a little bit more opaque. Let's see if I can make this just a little bit more textured. This is very subtle. I don't think you can really see it on camera. Maybe if I zoom in a bit more. Hang on, I'll zoom you in. There you go. Slightly different perspective, right? So I'm just seeing if I can make that sun shine through a little bit here. There we go. Well, I think this branch is a bit too light, so let's make that a bit darker as well. And then I'm slowly coming towards the end of the picture, I think. So let me zoom out again, see where we are at. I quite like them. I think it looks quite nice. I went all the way to the side of the paper. You can see a little bit of white around the edge, which is okay because it is a sketchbook. I could have taped it off, but I didn't really fancy doing that today. Am I missing something? It'd be nice if there was like like a little animal or some mushrooms or something. Maybe I'll add a little mushroom here. And of course, a white stem. This is where my small brush comes in very handy. There we go. An hour painting together. I really hope you enjoyed it. And let me know if you're painting along or maybe you're doing something else in this time. I hope you're staying dry. It's very grey out there. So yeah, thank you so much for joining in today. And I'll see you soon with another tutorial. Bye bye!